Ababa, capital of Ethiopia, Africa. I've come here to seek some insight to the Rastafarian faith and the man who inspired it. He'd be 100 today, the Emperor Haile Selassie I. Rastafari was his aristocratic name before he was crowned King of Kings. He ruled this country for half of the 20th century and tried to bring it into the modern world. In the end he was overthrown, but not before he'd become a symbol of all Africa, and far away, some saw him as a living god.
There's so many Rastafarians going to Ethiopia this year for the celebration of Haile Selassie that I just had to, find my way there, And it was really beautiful, All my ideas of Ethiopia for a long time that I've read about Ethiopia in the Bible, It was well fulfilled for me.
The emperor disappeared in August 1975. A year before, he had been arrested and removed from the palace by army conspirators, led by a colonel called Mengistu Haile Mariam. For 17 years, Mengistu and his military council called the Derg ruled Ethiopia. When this brutal regime collapsed in 1991, a new democratic government allowed a search for some trace of the emperor.
This 100-year birthday of His Majesty, it is very crucial. I went in the suburb a couple months ago doing a painting a building, a villa. And I saw it on the television one night where they digging up bones and put in the public and show to the world that it is His Majesty bones. And from that time, I reject it. From the very first day that they announced him dead, I reject it until I see they take out bone. I still reject it until now. No, they promised to bury the bone. No, they put it off. No bone burying. For it will be a confusion between a celebration of a living king, it will have a dead bone. We the Rastafarian, His Majesty is alive in flesh. He's not dead. Sorry, I forget. He's not dead. We have that courage, you see.
The notion that the emperor is still alive would surprise most Ethiopians. After all, they saw every trace of him removed by the Derg. I asked Shemelis Desai, who's a guide in the National Museum.
This throne was in the palace. This throne was using for, the court decision for Haile Selassie. He was very short, and there were steps to become on tops. So now, when Haile Selassie alive, and he gave us a museum as a gift, and the museum still they keep it as it is. They were the Haile Selassie's photographs. The statue of the Haile Selassie there, and they took it somewhere. I don't know where it is. That's holes, and there is some written which is written in English. If it's translated to in English, it's a land of Judah.
Ato Shemelis, the Rastafarians, have they been to see this?
So many Rastafarians, they saw it many times. And when they see these rounds, they give as the gods, how do you get it that in Amharic, they give as like as a god,
What do you make of all that?
Well, Rastafarians always they trust the Haile Selassie. Still, he never dies. He's alive, they said.
What do you think?
Well, that is, it could be for them, but we know that he dies already, 1974, by the Turks. So Rastafarians still, they say that they are alive. Haile Selassie is alive. If we said to them, they couldn't trust us, they would like to quarrel with us. So Haile Selassie still is priest now.
የሰው ልጅ ውበቱ የላይ ቅርጹ ጨርቁ ማጊያጌጫው እንጂ ይህ አይደለም ሐቁ ሰው ስለ ሰው ያለው ግምት ነው።
His Imperial Majesty would recognize Addis Ababa. Churchill Avenue still looks grand, though the city in general has decayed. But an affectionate public demonstration, that would surprise him.
Happy birthday, happy birthday, happy birthday, happy birthday.
In the Emperor's day, the police would have broken this up. But most of these marchers are too young to remember his autocratic rule, or the student revolts which helped to end it. For them, the Emperor is a symbol of national unity. They support a small political party which wants to bring back the royal exiles from America and to create a constitutional monarchy. Though some look like Rastas, their devotion to the Emperor is political, not religious.
The Rastafarians' concept of the Imperial Majesty is quite different from our people. Well, they see the Majesty from, I think, from the belief point of view. For our people, it's difficult to take it in this way.
As a Rastafarian, we accept certain concepts. And the first and initial and principal concept is that Haile Selassie is the fulfillment of an ancient prophecy that Christ would return to earth. That's what we accept, and that's what we know, and that's what we defend.
Whether it's spiritual or purely human being. For a different reason, these days we don't take any position. Particularly, we don't want to offend them.
To see where the monarchist devotion and the Rasta faith came from, we have to look back nearly 60 years, to a time when the Emperor first became a symbol of his country and of all Africa. Only a veteran can now remember when the last and most brutal chapter of the European scramble for Africa began. 1935, Italy claimed Ethiopia and Mussolini's troops invaded.
Arriverà al benessere, alla potenza e alla gloria.
The bugle call, come on, come all the drums are beating and the bugle call, come on, come on, don't mind what Mussolini said, let us march in battle array, and take a gun in our hand and defend the Ethiopian war, declare.
At the League of Nations in Geneva, the Emperor went to plead Ethiopia's just cause. The League, fearful of a shadow which would turn into the Second World War, did nothing. Shamefully, the great powers left Ethiopia to Mussolini and the Emperor to lonely exile in England.
His Majesty Negus Haile Selassie, I call upon the first delegate of Ethiopia.
እኔ ቀዳማዊ ኃይለ ሥላሴ የኢትዮጵያ ንጉሠ ነገሥት
Nowhere, I think, was the emperor's tragedy felt more deeply than among the black people of the West, the slave descendants in North America and the Caribbean. Black consciousness had dawned in Jazz Age Harlem, and Africa fermented in the exiles' hearts. Many supported a black activist called Marcus Garvey, and when he demanded Africa for the Africans and repatriation to the homeland, they saw Ethiopia as a special symbol of the whole continent. Until now, it alone had not been seized by white Europeans. Such people volunteered to fight for Haile Selassie, although only a handful managed to go, or they organized to send relief.
Black Americans rallied towards the cause, and black Jamaicans likewise, and so the organization was formed in New York, 105th Lennox Avenue, New York, and as Ethiopian World Federation Incorporated. Those people gathered up money, medicine, clothes, and what have you, and sent into Haile Selassie.
A branch of the Ethiopian World Federation soon opened in Jamaica, where Garvey came from. But in this neglected corner of the British Empire, black frustration had a new twist. A few ex-followers of Garvey had begun to mix Haile Selassie, symbol of Africa, with biblical notions of a Messiah. By abbreviating Jehovah, or Yahweh, to Jah, and adding this to the emperor's earlier name, Rastafari, they created the invocation Jah Rastafari, a black Messiah for their redemption. It would be years before any followers of the Rastafarian faith reached Ethiopia. The emperor knew nothing about them, as he himself returned, with British military help, to reclaim his throne.
Look what Mussolini is trying to do. Take a bigger mouthful than any man can do. The drums are beating and the bugle call, but we cannot let the Lion of Judah fall. So let us take a gun in our hand and defend the Ethiopian war. Declare.
I remember when the first batch of black Americans, Jamaicans, and these people came to Ethiopia. People like Colonel Robinson, who was a pilot, who fought on the side of Ethiopia, and others like Talbot, Piper, and many others came. These were educated people, and they had contributed, and they were took pain in our cause, in our sake. And Imperial Haile Selassie was one of them who saw them favorably. And in fact, he went as far as giving them a piece of land to settle upon, money to start their, to give them a chance to start with a good foundation. So the first batch, for some unknown reason, left. The second batch and the batch that came afterwards, they were not the type of expected people. By that I mean, not as human beings, they are all welcome, even today they are welcome. But they didn't bring education, technical know-how, nor enough money to start a form of living for themselves.
Almost all the people who came afterwards were Rastafarians. The Jamaican, who is now the longest remaining settler in Ethiopia, who spent half his life here, is Noel Dyer.
When I was 23, life was tough. I got my trade before. When I was 15, I started trading. I'm 65 now. I started trading when I was 15. And when about, after the war, 42, 45, war over, things get stiff. No work couldn't go on. Things was very tight. So I leave the country, step in Kingston and start to bowl. For Jamaica really. So 1959, the Rastaman, what you call, they rise up. They rise up. In Jamaica, they rise up, just rise up.
At first, the Rastafarians frightened the government, the police, and most Jamaicans. And it is true that a handful preached rebellion. But it began to dawn on the authorities that Rasta was not political. It was a religious movement.
So I went out there that Sunday evening and heard him to get to the meeting. And I was in the middle of the street and my girlfriend was in my arm. Her name is Gwendolyn. And Martin Maplana, he come down the rostrum and start to speak, and the first thing he say was Psalms 2. Why do the heathen range, and the people plot in vain, and the kings of the earth set themselves together, and ruler take counsel against the the night, and saying, let us break the bands asunder, cast the tape from us, and go on. Then he stop and they go into history now, and he talk about the history of the slave in Jamaica at a sugar factory where the white man built a place thing called Yalas, and that factory was tested by black man before the grind cane. So I looked at him and I said to my girlfriend, he looked like Moses. He said, who's Moses? He said, you ever seen the 10 Commandments? He said, yes. He said, Martin Moprana. I said, yes, I know, but he looked like Moses. So from that time, a different spirit, you know, just enter me through that man. Intermediate. Right away I was converted.
The faith in England came to us through Jamaica. Elders have travelled from Jamaica in the 60s and some in the late 50s and established the Rastafarian movement in England, plus the reading of books, the travelling to Jamaica to the different camps and to reason with the different elders, music, reggae music and Naibingi music on record had great effect. And the experiences that we went through growing up in England in schools, like prejudice and things, helped to make us draw towards our blackness and look to Africa for our future.
But what happened to us in Jamaica? We have a saying there, you take us out of Africa, you can't take Africa out of us. It is embedded. Then the ancient African, our culture in Jamaica, they play a thing they call kumina. Use the same type of drum like the Naibingi drums. So it never left us, you see. It is there. And when I was a boy, I used to sing about Africa. Take me back home to Africa. I want to go home.
Together with his mighty hand, under his command, the king control. No one but for us. Tell me who made the angels sing. Tell me who made the Lord tell me who are the King of Kings. No one but for us. I am the majesty and land. I partnered them together with his mighty hand. Under his command, the king controls. No one but for us. And you, I make the angels sing. Tell me who are the King of Kings. No one but for us. Oh, thank God, Jehovah. Let the man those that take him flee before him. But Marcus is not well. Now let the wicked lead to the back. This is our most Haile Selassie.
Well, Baba Shanties are a very humble set of people from Jamaica, and in a way, to me, they've got different ideas from most groups of Rastafarians. Only that one thing in common, that Haile Selassie is the Almighty. But apart from that, to most Rastafarian groups, they're a bit eccentric still,
At this moment, we are members of the Ethiopia Africa Black International Congress, Church of Salvation, based in Jamaica, 10 Miles Bull Bay. Under the leadership of our President, God and King, the Most Right Honorable King Emmanuel Charles Edward, Crown Champion of Human Rights and Human Justice, President Founder of this Congress, and who is also the only authorized ambassador for repatriation and reparation network for His Majesty Emperor Haile Selassie. Our movements here at this moment is to come and have discussion on the whole idea of repatriation, the whole movements of repatriation with the transitional government, and to agitate for our ships. The fundamental demands is 7, 9, or 13 miles of high water ships from Her Majesty Queen Elizabeth II, the President of the Transitional Government of Ethiopia, the President of Ghana, the President of Nigeria, and many other states, all governments of the world, and all who have benefited from the slave trade, to conjoin and support our President in Jamaica with ships for us, the slave subject, to return from the diaspora back to our homeland, Ethiopia.
Lovely Africa, lovely Africa, please send for Tara. I want to have a good talk with the Emperor. I want to go to lovely Africa, Mama, lovely Africa.
On the very first day we went to Jamaica as a slave, we want to come back the same day. So you couldn't get Africa out of us. When the opportunity, when the time comes for one to leave, to come back to Africa, he just after just left. His mother, everything. But he's not he himself make up his mind, you know. It's the man that's speaking through him. The prophecy that's written of him. But when you check back in the Bible, I think in Isaiah 33 or 43 something about that, it said, give my son from far. It said, fret not, O Jacob.
Say again?
Fret not, O Jacob, my servant, whom I'm choosing. I bring your son from far, and my daughters from the end of the earth. Everyone is called by my name, Rastafari, Selassie. So that bond in us, that bond in I and I. In that thing you make up to do a thing. You were called. You remember Jonah? He was sent to Nineveh, and he refused. He never wanted to go. You what happened in the belly of the whale. Well, I am Jonah, not into the fish, but into a ship by the name of Bogona, a Spanish ship. I was down at the deck. I find myself down there going to England. I leave Jamaica, no other purpose but to reach Ethiopia.
I want to go to lovely Africa, Mama, lovely Africa. Please send for Tara. I want to have a good talk with the Emperor, Mama.
Unlike most Jamaicans coming to England for work, Noel brought with him the Rastafarian custom of smoking marijuana or herb. To a Rasta, this is more than a forbidden drug or a harmless pleasure.
Well, that is the root, you know. That is the incense, you know. That is it. That is the root. Is that open you up, you know? Is that it gives you that connection close to God. When you have that, it take a clean land and a pure heart to serve God. And from your clean and God before a purpose, and you're moving clean, He reveals Himself to you. So is that what happened?
There is nowhere in the world in any religion that says use addicting materials to enhance religious beliefs.
Well, firstly, right, there's no rule in the movement that you have to smoke marijuana. Marijuana, right, is an African heritage. That means it's something that's in African history before the Europeans came here.
In principle, I am against their using it. But because they are aliens, because this is something that could be improved through education, we close one of our eyes.
Ethiopia may tolerate the Rasta's smoking habits, but during the time of Noel's journey, England was not so kind.
61 when I reached England, December, I was sent to prison innocently in Bristol for herbs. I was planted by a policeman. I was sent to prison innocently. In 1963, we met 62. No, 63 we met. I left Bristol and met them in London at Camberwell, Peckham, over Peckham. I met them there one night at a blues dance. No, at a labor exchange I met them, one of them. And he took me to his house and, you know, we have to smoke our weed, you understand? And we are Rastas, so they take me to get some smoke, you know, for they never met before. When we met together, we all meet now and we live as one family and it was brotherhood. I break a buckle head, you know, buckle. I make a jar, stuff it in it like a pipe, and burn it like a pipe. And that thing hit me. He said, tomorrow morning, leave London. And I walked down the street, I go to Peckham Street. I took a bus, I think it's 37, to Victoria. When I went there, which railway station, it said go to Dover, right? I can't read, I can't write. I stand here and say, very busy, you know what Victoria is? And I look around and say, oh heck, I have to get through, man. Rasta, man, you must have to go through this thing. And I listen and I watch the movement. I get the ticket to Dover and I don't know which train. But I leave England, I leave London with £5, 5 shillings and 5 pence, 8 penny, all in fives, you know.
How long did it take you to journey through Europe and Africa to Zion?
1 year. I leave September 64. I reach Addis Ababa 1965, September. 1 year. England the castle, from the beginning, England. We start from the end. H.I.M. All of it is H.I.M. France, Spain, Morocco, Algeria, Tunisia, Libya, Egypt, Sudan, Zion.
Foundation is in the holy mountains. The Lord loveth the gates of Zion more than all the dwellings of Jacob. With Ethiopia, this man was born there, and of Zion it shall be said that this and that man was born in her, and the Highest himself shall establish her. Well, sometimes I'd lay down in my villa and, you know, refresh my mind of the Psalms that I've read in the Bible, and you know, it's just a picture of the Bible itself. You know, when Christ was around, you know, there was hundreds of people with leprosy and people suffering and starving all around, you know. And when I look, you know, it was like almost, it's the picture, a total picture of the Bible of 2,000 years ago.
Yeah, I hear the Bible all the while. You have to have a Bible in school. In Jamaica, when you read 3rd grade, you have to have a Bible. Otherwise, the parents and the teacher is in trouble. You have to have a Bible. But the Bible was used in Jamaica to keep us quiet, you see. So you have to have a Bible.
Was it the King James Version English
King
Bible?
James Version, yes. Yeah. I love that man. He did a good work for I love that English man, truly.
This concludes part 1.
Put your hands together now and welcome on stage a fresh new vocalist we know as Garnet Silk. Ladies and gentlemen, give him a round of applause. Live, Garnet Silk.
Selassie, Rastafarian, Selassie, once I was blind, but no one see, yeah, oh God. put us in slavery, while they gave us such brutality. Whoa, leo, leo, whoa, yeah. Whoa, leo, leo, whoa, yeah. Put us in this world of wickedness, cover our face with darkness. All I see is war. I and I say we got to stay far. In this Armageddon, there will be no mercy. There will be weeping and wailing. Yeah. Whoa, leo, leo, whoa, yeah. Whoa, leo, leo, whoa, yeah. We're here to love and care for each other, oh, darling, and not to fight our brothers. No, so let's get together and live as one and destroy Satan's plan. Oh, leo, leo, whoa, yeah. Peace. Hear me now. I now greet you with true love. Remember, if you know not love, you know not God, because God is love. Jah Rastafari Selassie the first. Who don't like that belly burst? Run to it. Let Jah be praised while I pray for my blessings to rise. Oh, oh. Watch me. The belly full but their side. Big up Sky Food. Oh God. Selassie I. Oh well. Oh well. Belly full but their side. Have a lot and still wanting. Now without you we're empty. Fill us up in the mercy. And belly full but they're starving. Have a lot and still wanting. Now without you we're empty. Fill us up in the mercy. Man shall not live by bread alone, and I know, but by the words that proceeded from Jah. Man shall not live by bread alone, and I know, but by the words that proceeded from Jah. Belly full but they're starving. Have a lot and still wanting. Now without you we're empty. Fill us up in your mercy. Never leave us alone. Can't you see the way is dark, and we can make it on our own? I know some people come on in. You're looking on but not seeing. You're born with sight and lacking vision. Oh Lord, I pray for their salvation. Really full but they're starving. Have a lot and still wanting. Now without you we're empty. Fill us up in your mercy. Can't you see? It's Jah we need. And without Him we take need. He's my friend in times of need. Thank you, Jah, cause you've revealed, yeah. Tell it to about the time, let's have a pray. Remember, don't leave Jah inch his own way.
Religion for us, or the Bible, took a hold, or we became more conscious of it, or more readily to accept it when we came to accept the Rastafarian movement, or it was the Rasta movement that made many young black people take to their Bibles.
When I came back to England, I started to actually read the Bible with the Ethiopian perspective and looking at it through that eyes, and it was plain to see, very plain to see, Haile Selassie, the divine king, Christ in his kingly character.
Lovely Africa, lovely Africa. please send for terror. I want to have a good talk with the emperor. I want to go to lovely Africa, mama, lovely Africa. Please send for terror. I want to have a good talk with the emperor, mama. I dreamt him last night, so to see him is my delight. For I would feel as man to be in Africa and finish with Great Britain. I want to go to lovely Africa, mama, lovely Africa. Please send for terror. I want to have a good talk with the emperor, mama.
I met his majesty in the Jubilee Palace after all this time. One afternoon, he said to us, be at home in the Jubilee Palace. Make yourself at home like when he was in Jamaica. Everything will be all right. That was it. Bowed to him and went out back. So I left him that afternoon. The next morning, I took my things. Stick the job in Shashemene. I come to Shashemene in that job in the area territory with a letter and my documents.
Even with a job, Noel found a hard life of poverty in his promised land. The 500 acres of Shashemene is the emperor's gift to the black people of the West who helped Ethiopia in her time of distress. There are about 50 settlers here today, and all are Rastas except one, an American Baptist preacher, the Reverend Hillman.
I was employed. I did a little mechanic work back in the States before I left. So from that, they hired me as a heavy-duty mechanic. The Imperial Highway Authority. And I worked for them for 15 years until the trend changed. These socialists came in again and whatever. And they cited me as a rabbi. I don't know, but anyway, see, you say you're American, you don't, we can employ you any longer, so they put me out of work. I've been out of work over 8 years now. Honey, how long I've been out of work? 9 years, no work at all. And so I survive according to the power of the Almighty God.
The Reverend Hillman has no congregation. Shashemene's links are with Jamaica, and the emperor unwittingly encouraged this by his celebrated visit in 1966.
The Prince of Peace, coming from the east. The Prince of Peace, coming from the east.
Until this moment, no one had realized that there were about 10,000 Rastas, least of all the emperor. During the tour, His Majesty is reputed to have said, "Who am I to deny their faith?" In the years that followed, the emperor went forth from his palace to many foreign lands. He was a tireless diplomat on his country's behalf. But things were not all right at home. The Lion of Judah had encouraged education, and that's a dangerous commodity in a backward feudal society. Impatience began to show. The university students protested. Conspiracies started in the army. Then, in 1972, British television showed a terrible famine in Wollo province. This revelation cracked the emperor's image in the world and broke it at home.
I was Emperor Haile Selassie's cameraman for 8 years, and now I've been asked to appear in front of the camera, and I am shooting this very film too. Well, I have spent days and weeks on end at this Jubilee place. This was the hall where Emperor entertained his visitors, which included General de Gaulle, the Shah of Iran, and many other people. And there used to be banquets here late in the evening, champagne flowing, Ethiopian honey wine and everything else. I felt as a head of state, he has to take a blame for what happened in Ethiopia. He unfortunately wasn't very well advised, and that's why he was absolutely out of touch with his own people and the realities in Ethiopia. The Rastafarians believe that he's not yet dead, and he's just, risen up. I mean, I believe he was definitely murdered, and I don't believe that he's alive and he's risen. In fact, yesterday we saw his coffin with his bones, and all the indications are that he was murdered, and unfortunately that's the end of Emperor Haile Selassie. I think these Rasta people are dreaming.
The coffin of Emperor Haile Selassie.
It is put, she can.
Can you show us?
Yes, she can, sure. She's a coffin of Haile Selassie. Rastafarian believe in Haile Selassie. It's not right that believe you of the Rastafarian. Haile Selassie man, and great of Africa, from African, but it's not God Haile Selassie. Haile Selassie is man, and no, that's mistake the belief of Rastafarian men.
Ja, Rastafari.
We were hearing a lot about this the so-called Rastafarians. Now we are too much happy to see what they are going to show us today.
While the Rastas celebrated His Majesty before an intrigued audience of Ethiopians, other sadder things went on at the Addis prison. After the Emperor's removal, 60 of his high officials were executed here. Relatives had come, even from America, to mourn their lost families.
Emperor Haile Selassie's burial was scheduled for July 16th. It has now been postponed, but it will take place soon, and it's a very, very important commemoration for all of us who lived in his time and even for the future.
The funeral was rejected by the government. They announced when the Rastafarians arrived that the bones of Haile Selassie that they claimed that they found was the bones are too long for a man of 5'4", you know, so they forget about the burial, you know. Apparently His Majesty is just not, you know, in Ethiopia, you know, or no debt business, you know.
The Rastas on board the buses spent a week in Shashemene celebrating His Majesty's birthday with drumming and chanting, what they call a bingi. About 300 had come from London, Birmingham, Jamaica and the USA, but they didn't wish to be filmed. In the end, a small group gave us an audience.
I am Brother Moody, Chairman of the Ethiopian World Federation in Shashemene. First, let me say that Rastafari movement begins on a peace and love philosophy. And it is basically this, that we have been to school, we learned our African slave history, and we accept the teachings of the Holy Bible, and with this moral and spiritual awareness, I decided to take up the challenge to travel to Africa and to develop land graciously given to I by our God and King, Haile Selassie first.
We want to create business, both for the settlers here, that means the settlers who come. From that time, we bring up their living standards. The people around the general area, the business what we create, like black making machine. Well, on the black making, I have to really give thanks to all the people who bought a raffle ticket from us. You understand? Because the black making machine is here now, and we'll be shortly making bricks, supplying to the community. We already have people from Addis who say they need blacks. So that is what we really want to do, create employment for the people around.
Now, Psalm 68, verse 4. Sing unto God, sing praises unto His name. Extol Him that ride upon the heavens, by his name, Jah.
Every Ethiopian you meet now will ask you for a picture of His Majesty. At the same time, by your works, you'll be able to make him know that you're not just a man with locks upon your head. You're also a doctor, philosopher, teacher, you know, educator, farmer, and everything in creation.
Verse 11. The Lord gave the word. Great was the company of those that publish it.
For the past 2 years, right, we have a development program that was presented to the past regime and accepted also by this regime that involves 3 stages, which is first headquarters to be established on Shashemene land grant, and the second stage was to initiate small-scale industries, cottage industries, and the third stage would involve housing scheme and residents. The first stage has been accomplished in that we've finished our headquarters. Well, nearly finished our headquarters.
Now, verse 9.
So there is a light, there is a hope that the so-called educated Rastafarians would assist them in the future. And I as a private person, and an Ethiopian who has been exiled, was lived away for 26 years out of his country. I only wish that they would get the same chance that I got while I was in Sweden, even in Ethiopia. In other words, I hope they would get a chance to improve themselves and integrate themselves into the society of Ethiopia without giving way to their beliefs.
Brother Moody.
Don't cut me yet, John. Verse 32. Princes shall come out of Egypt. Ethiopia shall soon stretch her hands to God.
Yeah, I would like to tell you, Mr. John, about the Rastafarians. They wrote some comments. And Brixton from London, he said, disappointed that Haile Selassie is not represented in any form. Packen from London is another person, fire burn his comments. Callum from London, the very disappointed, not enough show on His Majesty. This is the comment from them.
Now I'm going to tell you a mystery, John. Do you want to cut me here?
Mystery? Well, perhaps the mystery is that idea of a true home, which calls the children of Africa back to her.
Many are calling, no? Many are called, but few are choosing. Many are called, but few are choosing. I was called, and I was choosing. It's funny, but it's true.
It is good that you are here to record this picture of me in my palace garden at Addis Ababa. People who see this throughout the world will realize that even in the 20th century, with faith, courage, and a just cause, David will still beat Goliath.